In the central slice of the UK, plenty of sunshine to go around, though it is going to continue to feel cold. As we head into Wednesday, there is still a risk of some snow showers, particularly around any exposed coasts. But once again, there's still going to be plenty of sunshine on the cards. Still feeling particularly chilly, though, especially in any brisk winds that will catch across any exposed coasts. To finish off the week and into the weekend, we're expecting further unsettled weather with heavy rain and some strong winds. So do keep an eye on our forecasts.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. There are long queues in the West Midlands on the M5 this evening. Now, the outside lane on that three-lane stretch closed off just after Junction 1, the West Bromwich-Birmingham exit, for emergency barrier repairs following a collision, causing long queues back onto the M6. The M4 is blocked heading west out of London from Junction 4 at Heathrow to the M25 following an accident, and on the Surrey stretch of the M25, one lane's been closed clockwise from 8 to 9, the Reigate-Leatherhead stretch of the motorway following an accident. In Oxfordshire, the A34 remains closed southbound from the Milton interchange down to the Chiltern interchange south of Didcot for accident investigation work. And in East Sussex, north of Lewes, the A26 remains closed at Earwick Corner following an accident involving a motorbike causing queues back onto the A27 and through the town centre. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
This is the final week to grab your chance to win Christmas on Us this year. There's £20,025 in tax-free cash. There's £5,000 to spend on gifts for all the family. There's £500 to spend in your favourite supermarket. And a festively themed GB News goodie bag. We'll get it all to you in time for the big day. For another chance to win, call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2, or post your name and number to GB09 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 22nd of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening. As British Storm Shadow missiles are fired deep into Russia, and everybody in Westminster seems to agree that it's the right thing, I'm asking strategically, is that really the right thing to be doing 59 days before Donald Trump goes into the White House? Defence cuts, HMS Albion, HMS Bulwark withdrawn, some saying this is a disastrous day for the Royal Marines. But, in some senses, did this have to be done? Was the date, frankly, the kit obsolete? We'll talk about the curse of teenage knife carrying, where kids now as young as 11 in large numbers are carrying knives for their own protection. What do we have to do to stop this? And Band-Aid, perhaps not quite as trendy as it was 40 years ago, as top artists now want nothing to do with the label. But before all of that, let's get the news with Sophie Reaper.
Thank you, Nigel. The time is just after 7 o'clock, and these are your latest GB News headlines. This afternoon, there have been unconfirmed reports that Ukraine has fired long-range British Storm Shadow missiles into Russian territory for the first time. A spokesperson for Prime Minister Keir Starmer said his office would not be commenting on reports or operational matters. Britain has previously said Ukraine could use Storm Shadow cruise missiles within Ukrainian territory, although the government has been pressing the United States to allow their use inside Russia for several months. Speaking exclusively to GB News, Tory party leader Kemi Badenoch said we need to do everything in our power to support Ukraine.
I would like to see de-escalation, but that needs to start with the Russians, who are the aggressor in this conflict. I believe that supporting Ukraine is the right thing. This is a proxy war that Ukraine is fighting on behalf of the rest of Europe, and I think we need to do everything we can to support them. Using British missiles at a time when we believe that Ukraine is fighting for all of Europe, in my view, is not the right way to look at things. Do we want Ukraine to win this war or not? And are we prepared to support them to win this war? That is what I believe.
Lambeth Palace has said Archbishop of Canterbury Justin Welby, who's quitting over his handling of the John Smythe abuse case, will complete his official duties by January 6th. In a statement, Lambeth Palace has said, following the announcement last week of his resignation as the Archbishop of Canterbury, Archbishop Justin intends to complete his official duties by the upcoming Feast of Epiphany on January 6th. Archbishop Justin intends very little public-facing activity between now and Epiphany, but plans to honour a small number of remaining commitments. A report has found that too many children in England, including some as young as 11, are carrying knives because they feel unsafe in their neighbourhoods. The charity, which surveyed 10,000 children aged 13 to 17, found that 20% of teenagers have been victims of violence in the past 12 months. 1/3 of teenage children reported avoiding areas, whilst around 27% alter their travel routes or avoid public transport altogether to stay safe. And the funeral of One Direction star Liam Payne has taken place today. Liam's girlfriend, Kate Cassidy, arrived at St Mary's Church in Amersham in Buckinghamshire, along with dozens of locals and fans who gathered outside the church to pay their final respects. One Direction star Harry Styles was also at the funeral, along with former bandmates Niall Horan, Zayn Malik and Lewis Tomlinson. Liam passed away on October 16th, aged 31, after falling from his third-floor balcony in Argentina. Those are your latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sophie Reaper. More from me in the next hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Well, in the last few days, British long-range Storm Shadow missiles have been fired fairly deep into Russia. The same has happened with American missiles. This is the first time in 1,000 days that this has happened. Keir Starmer at the G20 today saying it's the right thing to do because it puts Ukraine in the strongest possible position to win. Now, it was interesting in Westminster today, listening to the Labour government, the Conservative opposition, the Liberal Democrats. Everybody still seems to think that if we give Ukraine enough weaponry, that somehow they're going to win this war. And yet, when I get outside of Westminster and talk to ordinary folk, I've not met anybody in the last month who thinks Ukraine is ever going to win. And I do wonder, right at this time, whether it's the wise thing to do. Well, Catherine Foster of GB News spoke to Leader of Opposition Kemi Badenoch just a few hours ago. This was her view on the use of the missiles.
If those missiles have been fired into Russia, you're supportive of that?
This is not an easy thing. We would like it for there not to be any war. But getting concerned about a war being fought using British missiles at a time when we believe that Ukraine is fighting for all of Europe, in my view, is not the right way to look at things. Do we want Ukraine to win this war or not? And are we prepared to support them to win this war? That is what I believe.
Well, I think through an interpreter, you might say she just about supports the decision, but it wasn't particularly clear. I worry about this, and I worry because I think the idea Ukraine's going to win, frankly, is for the birds. I think the war has gone on for long enough. I think the casualties are massive. I think all we're doing is helping to prolong a stalemate. That's my view, and it has been actually for some time. But strategically, Donald Trump, in 59 days' time, will be in the White House. He is committed to negotiating a peace settlement. No one quite knows what that might look like, but that is what he's committed to do. Is the use of American and British long-range missiles going to help him in that process or make it more difficult? And are we wise at this very moment in time to be allowing our missiles to be fired deep into Russia? Love to get some of your views on that, please. Farage at GBNews.com. I'm joined in the studio by Sir Ian Duncan-Smith, Conservative Member of Parliament for Chingford and Woodford Green. I'm also joined by Kwasi Kwarteng, former Tory MP and Chancellor, and Lloyd Russell-Moyle, former Labour MP. Ian, Boris is doing it as well. Boris says Ukraine's going to win. It's not, is it?
Well, can I just declare an interest here? I have a charity that works feeding people right behind the front line. I visited on a number of occasions. I'm going out there. It's sometime soon, I hope. I've seen the devastation that's been wrought by the Russians. It is quite beyond belief, and you have to be there to see it. Bodies still lying around, can't be retrieved, shelling directly and deliberately of ordinary people's homes. The problem has been that Ukraine has had to fight this war with two hands tied behind its back. Russia has been able to lob directed missiles at every single part of Ukraine, civilian areas, cities, etc. Ukraine has not been able to return the favour. You can't win a war unless you fight a full war. There's no such thing as a limited war gives you anything at all. So this decision probably should have been taken well over a year to 2 years ago, because what's happened is they have been constrained. That has meant that Russia has been able to put its supply depots much closer to the front line, which is critical in resupply, its airfields much closer to deliver those cruise missiles and those rockets, and their missile sites much closer, the mobile ones. So what you're trying to do here, if you give them these longer-range missiles and allow them to use this, is to drive that Russian set of territories and resupply, rockets, all the rest of it, further back, much further back, making it much more difficult for them to do their targeting and their resupply. So with that poor resupply, then the Russians who are on the advance in Ukraine find it very difficult because they will be running out of ammunition. It's very difficult to get it to when you can get pounded on the resupply. Ukraine has not been allowed to do that. You target. Well, I was in army. I was in the army. You target those supply lines ruthlessly to make sure that supply stops. Once it stops, the front line begins to go wobbly, and that's where it is. So when you ask me the simple question, can they win the war? It is, of course, feasible for Ukraine to win the war. It's much tougher now for them to do it because of the failure of the West to understand what it takes to win a war.
Well, it takes troops to win a war.
It takes troops, but it also takes weapons.
I mean, given they're running out of men, would you send British troops to Ukraine?
No, I don't believe... The whole point about Ukraine right now is by supplying it and giving it the weaponry, you do not run the risk, therefore, having to put boots on the ground. That is the key. If you don't do this, we will be having boots on the ground.
So you're not worried about provocation? You're not worried about an unstable Putin responding excessively? I mean, he's launched this new nuclear doctrine.
I know, Nigel.
We can't ignore it completely.
No, I understand this completely. Of course there is a risk. War is brutal, but it is full of risk. And you make choices and you take chances and you have to decide what will happen on the other side, but you can never predict it. My point about Putin is Putin started this war thinking it was an easy walkover. It hasn't turned out. He's lost hundreds of thousands of soldiers, civilians, etc., slightly better protected than the Ukrainians. But the main point to make about this is Putin, if he succeeds in taking what he wants and in basically taking over even a large chunk of Ukraine, the problem we've got then is that becomes the key message to every single totalitarian state that we already now are under attack from. China has caught his eyes on this. They're supplying him with weaponry through North Korea. Their idea is they're going for Taiwan. Now, here's the point about Taiwan. 72% of everything made in the world today is made in the area around Taiwan, a bit of China, and down into the South China Sea.
This is the semiconductors, particularly.
But more than that, everything made, Nigel, that we use every day, 72% is now located in that area. One blockade or an attack on Taiwan, £12 trillion, or dollars worth, $12 trillion of hit to the global economy. Ukraine was worth $1 trillion. This is on a scale.
Oh, no, I get that.
So my point really is right now, they are working together, all these states, Iran, North Korea, China, Russia. So there's more at stake here over Ukraine. And what has angered me, I'll be honest with you, is the utter hopeless failure of Europe and also the US, but the US better than Europe, to get a grip and an idea about what do you want. There's been no strategic idea. Do you really want them to win or not?
I mean, there is a way of stopping...
And the holdback means I don't know if I want them to win.
There is a way of stopping Putin, of course. It's you get into the negotiating table, you agree a settlement on territory, and you then give NATO guarantees, absolute guarantees, to Ukraine, and that says to Putin, that's it.
But here's the key. I understand that. Sit down with rational people, reach a rational deal. I don't think Putin is rational at the moment because, of course, he has got so much hurt in Russia. He has to succeed in being able to tell the Russians...
But Ian, that's fine.
But let me... Can I just finish off?
Alistair, that's fine.
Yeah, but I was going to bring in Trump on this one.
Go on. Well, I'll tell you what, we'll bring in Trump in a second.
OK.
What I want to say is this. I get all that, but very powerful polling.
I know.
Out from Ukraine today, by a very large margin, Ukrainian citizens want an end to this war. Ukrainian citizens want a negotiated peace. And even if Putin is irrational, isn't it still right to try to get him to the table?
Yes, but the key thing is how do you get him to the table on terms that are acceptable one way or the other? And this is the point. If you do it on the back foot, if Ukraine goes to the table in a weak position, the claims will be more than already exist today. Putin is not going to hang back. He's going to say, well, you're on the back foot, you don't agree this deal, we're taking further action. He's got nothing in that sense to lose. So Ukraine's problem right now is that the West hasn't figured out whether it ever wanted them to win or even to get a stalemate. So the West is the designer of this problem. Now, with a new president coming in...
In 59 days.
Exactly right. My view about President Trump is very simple. He never really lets anybody know what he really wants or thinks. That keeps people like Putin on the edge of not knowing. If he's going to help sort this out, what he'll have to do is say to Putin, which he said, I think, a few weeks ago, don't you increase this war. He gave him a very serious warning. He even talked about the troops, the facilities they've got in Europe. That was a very stark message to Putin. So if I was Trump, and I hope he will do this, he will say, the only way this gets decided is if you start moving back and we separate the pair of you, and then we can have a discussion. My main point here, and he may do this, I don't know, I'm not going to guess what he does.
Sure.
But I simply say, at the end of it all, Ukraine in a state of complete weakness is not going to be a partner in a negotiation.
Right, Ian makes the point there, that Trump said, just slow down here. And at that very moment, and a few weeks before Trump comes in, we decide to start firing missiles deep into Russia. Is that a wise thing to do?
Look, I worry that we haven't quite worked out the strategy out of this. And Ian is right to some extent. We've come to this too late, and now we're flailing around, partly, I think, because Biden and others know that they're going to be out soon, and they want to make sure Ukraine is on the front foot. That's all well and good. But where's the end strategy? Where are the red lines that they're willing? There's got to be a negotiation at the end of this. There will have to be some territory ceded at the end of this. Crimea will have to be normalised, and some of the other bits of territory. That's just the reality. But to tell you the truth, I said that within the first month of this war happening, that would be where we ended up. And so the real reason that we needed Ukraine to succeed is because we, Russia and America, signed an agreement when Ukraine agreed to give up their nuclear weapons to say we would protect its territorial integrity. And if we allow Ukraine to be completely done over, the danger is other countries that are looking at either getting nuclear weapons or who have the ability but haven't yet will say, well, that giving up and reassurances that Russia, Britain and America gave to protect Ukraine didn't work. The only thing that protects you is to have a nuke yourself. And that will be a dangerous proliferation. So I do think Ukraine needs to come out on top, but it doesn't mean that they need to win every single point down the line.
No. I mean, Ian makes some very powerful points particularly about supply lines and why these Storm Shadow missiles can be useful. I just question the timing.
Look, so I think Sir Ian is absolutely right. We didn't know, as the West, what we wanted out of this thing. And so what we've done is we've dilly-dallied, and now at the 11th hour we've given them these weapons. You're quite right. We should have done it earlier because, as dare I say, Kemi said, after all the waffle she started with, if I may say so. But her question is at the end were very pertinent. Do we want Ukraine to win? Yes, most of us do. And what can we do to help them win? Now, in the reality, they're not going to get 100% of what they want. But as Sir Ian said, they've got to be in the strongest position. And we've seen this before. I remember when Obama came in 2009, Israel then attacked Gaza because there's that 2-month transition period when the new president comes in. And it's very critically important that Ukraine is in the strongest possible position ahead of any deal that President Trump might broker. So there is a logic to helping them at this point.
OK. Final word, Sir Ian. As you said, we never quite predict what Trump's thinking, what he's going to do. Do you think he has a chance of reaching a reasonable, fair settlement?
I think in due course, yeah, I think so. I think one of my problems with Biden has been I don't think he ever he understood what he really wanted. He knew what he didn't want, but never what he wanted. And I think this is the problem. When you're in a war, you have to have some clear strategic thinking. And whatever else one thinks, and people have different views about Trump, quite often different from what the reality is. The key thing about him is he's coming in with a huge mandate. I mean, this is a president that won all the swing states, who got the popular vote. Yeah. There's no question now about whether he had the right to govern. So, and with the Congress and the Senate with him, I think there's a fair chance he can turn to Russia or whatever and hit the table pretty hard and say, this stops, and you're going to listen to what this is about. Because I think, being in that strong position, the signal goes wide to all the totalitarian states. If we give in and make a weak presence with this is just going to perpetuate everywhere else.
Well, I hope you're
Nuclear weapons, more invasions, Taiwan.
On all of those counts, I hope you're right, Sir Ian. Thank you very much indeed for coming and joining us. And whilst this goes on, we get an announcement today in the House of Commons about quite significant defence cuts. But was this because of the dire inheritance from the last government? Discuss that in a moment.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Online dating apps are still the go-to for millions of British adults, with 1 in 10 using them to look for a romantic connection.
Yes, are you one of them? Let us know. But with many apps introducing subscription fees and complex algorithms, the world of online dating has never been harder to navigate. So who better to join us to discuss this than Mr. Tinder himself, Stefan Pierre Tomlin. You have been dubbed Britain's best-looking eligible bachelor.
Yeah, so this happened back in 2016. Got an email from Tinder, and it was like, you're the most swiped man on Tinder.
So just explain to us, for viewers who don't know, what is swiping? What does that mean on Tinder?
Yeah, so on Tinder, the app, if you swipe left, that means you don't like the person in front of you. And if you swipe to the right, that means you like that person.
Do you mind still being associated with that? It's a good thing.
Well, it made me who I am now, and I love sharing how I was successful, and now I'm like a dating expert.
What's your situation now? Are you with anyone? Are you still single, paying the bill?
So I'm seeing someone at the minute. Things are going well, and I'm a dating expert, so I'm always giving advice to people.
Does she know your title of most swiped?
Of course, who doesn't? It's quite hard. It's quite hard being the most swiped man on Tinder because you get a label on you. So I find it harder than anyone else, to be honest.
And where did you meet her? That's the big question.
At an event.
So
not on Tinder, ironically.
So for all that trouble online, it's actually a real life rendezvous. Which
I mean, I have met people on Tinder in the past, and it has worked. Well, it didn't work, but yeah.
I need to know how to do the famous Stefan Smolder.
That camera is not a camera. That is your best friend, that's your lover. So you really smash from the camera, so it goes like this.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
We asked you, Is Keir Starmer and Joe Biden's decision wise? Neil says Ukraine will never get their lost land back, and the West said nothing when Russia took back Crimea. Well, that's not actually true. The West did say things. Ellen says, I totally agree with Sir Ian Duncan-Smith. We should have given Ukraine permission long ago to use whatever weapons would help to protect their country and their people. I sincerely hope they do win this awful war. Well, good luck with that. Trevor says Ukraine may not be able to win now, but we can't let them lose. Putin cannot be trusted. Trump must stand up to him. And I think on that point, we all agree, and I've actually got some confidence. I think that Putin will be scared of Trump. At least I hope he's scared of Trump. Now, the Defence Secretary, John Healey, in the House of Commons today, on the very day we learn that our very expensive Storm Shadow missiles are being used by the Ukrainians, announces defence cuts.
As I have told the House since taking office, the problems were even worse than we thought. It was a dire inheritance, the state of the finances and the state of the forces. I can confirm that 6 outdated military capabilities will be taken out of service. HMS Albion and HMS Bulwark, landing ships both effectively retired by previous ministers but superficially kept on the books at a cost of £9 million a year.
Well, if it's a dire inheritance, there's no need to make it worse, is there? Actually, one or two of the things he announced today make sense. The updating of the helicopters, I think, makes sense. But the fact that, yes, another Type 23 frigate is just going to be withdrawn and ultimately replaced by something in a few years' time, I really worry about that. And interesting, Admiral Lord West speaking out very strongly against these cuts. Lloyd, they can't blame everything on the last government, can they?
Well, you can usually for about a year.
Well, that's what they're doing, isn't it?
And then it starts to wear thin. Look, this is probably a long-running problem. We've been particularly bad at renewing fleet when it needs to come to renewal, and rather than having an automatic programme that we say, you know, in companies and organisations, you have a depreciation, and when that item is depreciated to a certain level, you automatically start to repurpose it. We don't do that with the military. Instead, what we do is we try and use the assets that we've got, and then every now and again we do a strategic defence review, in which isn't really strategic. It's based on how much money have we got that we think we can spend and get away with. It's totally the way we've been doing it is wrong, and so it probably needs to change. And they're probably right to say some of these things need to be withdrawn. What they should have done also is said we will expedite frigates being built in Britain and procured for the military on a longer term.
I mean, the Navy since 2010 has been run down in the most extraordinary way.
Yeah, I mean, look, we took a political decision in 2010. People called it austerity, but I think the Defence Department did take a hit unnecessarily because we were trying to balance the books. But these are political choices. So the same government that gave 10 billion roughly to the trade unions in their pay deals has now said we don't have money to pay for frigates and defence, and that's the nature of the game.
They're not quite saying they've got no money to pay for frigates. What they're saying is we're paying 9 million for frigates that don't really work.
No, that's true. But here's an irony, Lloyd. As well. They're trying to save money.
Here's an irony.
A question
for both of you. Here's an irony. I think some of our viewers at home might think this. These cuts, and as I say, Admiral Lord West and others calling this a very dark day for the Royal Marines because of the loss of amphibious capacity. These cuts in total will save, over the next few years, £500 million. Yeah. We've given £8 billion worth of military aid to Ukraine already. Are our priorities right?
Well, I think it's right to give some resources to Ukraine. I think, as we just discussed previously, I think we can all agree that we gave them probably in the wrong order, and we could have probably spent an awful lot less.
A lot of money.
An awful lot less if we'd spent more early on and less now. I do actually think that we underspend on our military, and what we should be doing is spending on our military and then having a more activist military that engage in humanitarian crises around the world, who are providing aid and support,
but
also
how's that going to be funded? I mean, it's all very well to say we're going to spend a lot more money.
Well, we could have spent less on Ukraine,
military. No, I think Ukraine was absolutely fundamentally important, as Sir Ian said.
More important than our own military.
It was where the fighting was. It was an existential crisis.
So we're defenceless, but we're supporting Ukraine.
But Putin and the message that stopping him sends to the world, to the mullahs in Iran, who've got expansionist ambitions, to China over Taiwan, that's really important.
But this is the
problem. And it's important that we supported Ukraine, I think. to the extent that we have.
But this is the problem with our general military strategy. War breaks out, we spend a load of money in it, but when we're in relative peace times, don't worry, you don't have to spend anything.
But that's what generally happens. Military budgets collapse when you're out of wartime.
Look, I agree. I'm not saying that this is party political, one side or another. There is a problem with how we consider our military. Rather than we should be considering defence, we should be considering a long-term investment, and we should be building up bases around the world that can provide support for aid as well as
Lloyd's
support
point
for
actually is quite powerful, isn't it? That the military could be used for other things.
It can be.
And they'd be happy to be used.
But I wasn't taking it in a party political spirit.
Yeah.
I mean, as a matter of common sense, of course you're going to spend more when you're actually in a war or a close ally is actually in a war than you would at another time, because it's real-time danger and real-time cost.
You would probably need to spend less in a war if you had prepared better in
Well, I think those arguments we had before both the last big wars that we got engaged in, that's 100 years ago, that argument was going on. So, you know, anyway, we will, for the last segment of the show, be talking, believe it or not, about Band-Aid 40 years on. And suddenly, it's not quite as trendy as it used to be. But before that, Ben Leo has an interview with Eric Trump, which he's going to tell us all about now.
Hello, Nigel. Yes, we got a great chat, an hour at the beautiful golf course up in Scotland, Trump International. Eric was telling me you were on fine form, Nigel, on election night. He said you enjoyed his win more than anybody else at Mar-a-Lago that evening. On more serious matters, he had a stern warning, Eric Trump, to leaders in the UK who have been running their mouths in recent months and weeks, including those Labour activists who went to Pennsylvania to campaign for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. Sadiq Khan's comments in recent weeks trebling down on accusations of racism, homophobia towards Donald Trump. I said to Eric, does this kind of rhetoric come into your father's mind when it comes to trade deals and tariffs? Because we've heard in recent weeks that Trump is going to slap the UK with £20 billion worth of tariffs and he doesn't give a damn about the UK. And this is what he had to say.
Days of America being stupid are over. It won't happen. And so I think my father would love nothing better to have a great relationship with the UK. He adores this, this country. Hence the reason he's put hundreds of millions of dollars of his own money into building the greatest property on earth. There's no place in the world he'd rather have a great relationship with. I think he would love to see a great trade deal. I think he'd like to see a trade deal that reciprocated for both parties.
Does the behaviour of Labour activists, Labour MPs, would that stick in your father's mind when it comes to trade deals and tariffs?
Yeah. Do I think that helps foreign relations? No, I don't think that helps foreign relations.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. There's snow in the forecast for parts of Scotland and also later on in parts of the southwest. But for many of us, it's going to be dry, plenty of sunshine, but it is going to be feeling cold. That's all thanks to this northerly flow that's stretching across the country, bringing us that risk of snow and the cold feel to the weather. So plenty of wintry showers moving in their way across northern parts of Scotland, these falling as sleet and snow, particularly across high ground where we're expecting some significant accumulation. For much of the country, there's lots of dry weather on offer this evening, plenty of clear skies, so a sharp frost and plenty of icy stretches by the time we reach the morning. And then some outbreaks of rain just clipping the parts of the southwest by the time we reach Thursday morning too. So plenty of wintry showers continuing across northern parts of Scotland, these feeding inland at times too, with some sleet and some snow. Some just feeding into northern parts of Northern Ireland, perhaps northern parts of Wales too. But for many across northern parts of England, elsewhere across England and Wales, plenty of clear skies to go around. So once again, a sharp frost and some icy stretches, so do take care for the Thursday morning commute. Across the southwest, though, a different story. We have outbreaks of rain just clipping Devon and Cornwall, later on into southern parts of England and Wales. This heavy at times of falling as sleet and snow over high ground, though it's not out of the question that some flurries could fall to lower levels too, which may cause some disruption. Wintry showers continuing across the north, but once again across Wales and the central slice of the UK, plenty of sunshine to go around, though it is going to continue to feel cold. As we head into Wednesday, there is still a risk of some snow showers, particularly around any exposed coast. But once again, there's still going to be plenty of sunshine on the cards. Still feeling particularly chilly, though, especially in any brisk winds that will catch across any exposed coasts. To finish off the week and into the weekend, we're expecting further unsettled weather with heavy rain and some strong winds. So do keep an eye on our forecasts.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Youth violence just gets worse and worse. 20% of children aged 13 to 17 reported being victims of violence in the past year alone. Quite extraordinary figure. But this all gets worse, actually, when you start to look at knives. Now, we've talked about knives many, many times on this programme. But this report's pretty shocking because it says now kids as young as 11 are now carrying knives. But the reason, the motivations for carrying knives, 47% of those teenagers carrying knives say they carry them as a form of protection. I'm joined by Peter Blexley, a regular on this show, former Metropolitan Police detective. So it isn't just people carrying knives because they're bad dudes, it's people carrying knives because they're frightened somebody else is carrying a knife, which presumably means knives just get used more.
It does indeed, and the ages of these young people carrying knives is just getting lower and lower and lower. There's a considerable number of 11-year-olds out there with knives in their back pocket, down their trousers, and they are willing and able to use them if the necessity arises. But of course, the reason for carrying these knives is born out of fear. They feel that if they are attacked by somebody who's got a knife, well, then they want one as well. And, of course, clearly they're not being taught to run away and they're not being taught how to defuse the situation. The problem, in essence, is that if we go back to the 1990s, 97 or thereabouts, the police fell into the grip of academia. And these academics told them that patrolling the streets was a waste of time. And the senior police officers, right through to this current day, have foolishly believed that. They've never understood the hidden value, the secret value of patrolling, which is so much to do with reassurance of the public, deterring people from committing crime, and creating an image that the streets are safe. That's all been lost for decades. It could be regained. Public trust could be regained, but we need senior police leadership to understand the value of patrol.
Is one of the reasons that a young teenager carrying a knife wouldn't walk away from a difficult situation, wouldn't help diffuse a difficult situation, is that they're in one gang and the threat's coming from another gang, and you can't, in that situation, back down. How much of this do you think is linked to gangs?
Oh, a huge amount of it, of course, which are in turn inextricably linked to the illegal drugs industry. And that's another huge argument. I personally would like to see the entire illegal drugs industry legalised and regulated, but we would be here for weeks if we would discuss that in depth. Regardless of that, gangs need to be tackled effectively, and that's not going to be done by police officers patrolling the streets. That takes another set of policing skills and tactics to do that. And there is some work being done on it, but not enough. There needs to be a joined-up picture. So much of modern policing leadership turns its nose up at what was done in the past, whereas what they should really be doing is embracing much of it, whilst, of course, keeping an eye on the now and the future.
I'm very struck that it's not very difficult to put metal detectors on the entrance to buses, to put metal detectors on the entrance to train stations, to put metal detectors on the entrance to department stores, it's not even that expensive to do it. Don't we need to start thinking about doing this?
Yeah, there's an element of that, and some was done in my local borough. I was talking to a police officer only the other day about that, and they did have an element of success. But if it's done piecemeal here and a bit there and a bit there, as opposed to a completely joined-up policy, then, of course, its effectiveness is reduced dramatically. We need joined-up thinking nationwide. We've got to stop the 43 different police services of England and Wales operating like independent fiefdoms with their chief constable sitting atop of all these organisations. There is a dire need, and if we need any reminding of it, let's just rewind to last week and those people being convicted of murdering 2 teenage boys in Bristol, of all places. This epidemic is everywhere.
So stop and search, Peter?
Oh, undoubtedly. But I'm so close to Westminster, Theresa May's name comes to the fore, and she was absolutely instrumental in dramatically reducing the number of stop and searches
And the reason, of course, Lloyd, and you can see the deep frustration on Peter's face and in his voice, is we're terrified of stop and search in case we do it in an area with a different ethnic mix. How are we going to get rid of all of that and just start treating everybody as being the same? And if it's a bad knife crime area, let's just do this.
Well, I think Peter puts his finger on it around community policing, actually. I disagree with him with the timetable. I think that what happened in '97 is there was a move to fully qualified police officers would move to investigations, and we would create a cadre of community PCSOs, which did work for a period. But the problem is that they have been cut and they've been moved around like any... And they have no connection with local areas now. You know, my local PCSO has to travel 7 miles up to the police station every day, and he's given a different round every day. When I grew up, there were 2 police houses on our street. Those were the people who you saw out. One of them was a dog's handler. You go out clubbing in the night, he was there with the dog. You saw Colin. If you got into trouble, Colin knew where you lived, Colin knew your parents, and you got into more trouble because. So I actually think that I totally agree. We need to move to that. And the other thing that the police did is they actually ploughed a lot of resources in my day into youth diversion activities, boxing clubs, other kind of sports clubs. That was joined-up thinking. Now, I don't think it went in '97, but I do think it's gone in the last 14 years.
Let's not talk about the party politics, but the broad point you're making.
One second. The PCSOs. I mean, the criticism was they were cops on the cheap, they weren't proper cops. But actually, Lloyd's point, they really were part of communities and quite visible. And that was something, austerity or whatever. We had this odd situation with 14 years of a huge cut in police and then a huge recruitment campaign.
That's right, at the end of when Boris came in. But look, so the point you're making about the Bobby on the beat, you don't hear that phrase anymore, but that's what it was, effectively. And that had lasted 150 years since the police force was a thing. We moved away from that, largely driven by academic, as you say, thinking, whatever. And I think that was very, very bad. But the underlying cause, and we don't have time to debate this, is the economic incentives of the gangs. That's what's driving this. You know, the turf wars, the drug deals, all of that.
Does Peter have a point? I mean, what he said a moment ago is considered very radical.
It is.
But he thinks if we decriminalise these drugs and we sell them over the counter and regulate it, that a lot of this crime would disappear.
I hear a lot of police officers saying that. What's interesting is I hear more police officers saying that than people on the street because they have seen it and understood it, and understood at the moment we're on a hiding for nothing, chasing these fictitious...
It's a very difficult debate because what will happen, as soon as you legalise it, there will be instances of young kids obtaining the stuff illegally, destroying their lives, and you'll just have the media speaking to their parents.
Legalise and regulate, please. Never separate those two words for my vision of what I would like to see happen.
It has to be regulated in a very tight way.
It certainly does.
There are always slips through the cracks, and if anything happened to a vulnerable person, even if you regulate and legalise, then the debate will flip back.
You know, one thing I will say is that we are unafraid on this channel to debate absolutely anything and everything. I think it's why GB News is doing quite well. One last thought from you, Peter, if I may, before the break. My What the Farage moment of today. You remember the horrific bomb plot, the Blue Water bomb plot, where they planned to use over 600 kilograms of ammonium nitrate. It was following on from the atrocities that happened on the trains in Spain, where hundreds died. And they wanted to bomb Blue Water shopping centre on a Saturday afternoon. I mean, congratulations to our intelligence services and everybody else for thwarting this. One of these fellas, Wahid Mahmood, when he was sentenced, the judge said, "You have betrayed this country that has given you every opportunity," because he came from a household in Pakistan. "All of you, to the whole lot, may never be released. It is not a foregone conclusion. This fella's just been released. What's the point of any of it?"
Every day when we do not have a terrorist attack is huge credit to our amazing counter-terrorism police and our security services and others, and I doff my cap to them endlessly with gratitude. This man has clearly persuaded the parole board that he is fit for release. It's the parole board that need to have a finger pointed at them should he re-offend, because they, of course, have deemed him fit for release. I think the amount of time that he's served in jail is not sufficient, but of course those anonymous souls from the parole board who we never hear publicly explaining their actions would think otherwise.
I think we know Peter Blexler's view of the whole parole system in this country. Peter, thank you for coming on and wearing, without doubt, the most entertaining jacket that has yet been seen on GB News. We look forward to seeing you again very soon. In a moment, Band-Aid, not quite as trendy as it used to be. I had to tease you about it.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
We're talking about Gareth Southgate and his proposed on. There's a lot of rumours going around saying he's going to get a knighthood. So people like Nana are saying to me, why?
Because he hasn't won anything, has he? Look, I'm not a big fan of football. I watch England and the big matches, but he hasn't won anything. I mean, like, he hasn't actually won anything. He'll be following in the footsteps of people like Sir Alf Ramsey, Sir Bobby Robson, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
What has Gareth Southgate actually won?
Right, don't ask me. Let's ask our guests on this. So, has he truly earned the right to do this? Should all England managers, should you become an England manager and then get a knighthood as a result, or is that devaluing the honour? There you see on your screen to debate this, Harry Harris, top football writer, and royal commentator Angela Levin. She knows a thing or two about all of this. Angela, what do you think?
I think absolutely not. I mean, I know he's a good example to people, but he's a sort of almost. He's almost done this. He's almost won that. You can't have someone to have a knighthood if you're an almost. You can't. This is someone who does the most amazing things. This is a hero. This is a serviceman. It's not somebody who does really kindly and looks after his people, and it's just not fun. I think it just diminishes the whole thing of giving people such a high level of gratitude.
GB News, the People's Channel. Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
If you're old enough, you'll remember it. It was a very, very big moment. It was 40 years ago. It was Band-Aid, the Christmas song. It followed a shocking report by Michael Burke, still around, still broadcasting on the BBC. It talked about the famine that was taking place in Ethiopia and indeed other parts of Africa. And I think we were all genuinely shocked by it. Bob Geldof was the inspiration behind Band Aid, and it was a huge success. But 40 years on, they're still making Christmas records and adding to the originals new lyrics and new people. But Fuse ODG, who I have to confess is not an artist that was very well known to me, has said, look, I don't want anything to do with this. Actually, you know, he says, while they may generate sympathy and donations, they perpetuate damaging stereotypes that stifle Africa's economic growth, tourism and investment, ultimately costing the continent trillions and destroying its dignity, pride and identity. By showcasing dehumanising imagery, these initiatives fuel pity rather than partnership, discouraging meaningful engagement. Very interesting and very brave of a pop artist to say that. It would appear that Ed Sheeran now rather agrees, because he says he would not have chosen for his lyrics to have been put onto this year's Christmas record. Simon Boyle is a music journalist, knows a lot more about this than I do. Simon, you know, I guess in some ways Band Aid, it's been there forever, but these are quite serious questions that are being raised, aren't they?
They are, and they've been raised in quite a grown-up way. Fuse ODG, who I share with you, I'm not hugely familiar with his music, but I do know him because of his wider connections, including with Ed Sheeran, who is a friend of his, who he's collaborated with. So he's got a reasonably large platform. He's also Ghanaian British by heritage, so fairly obviously he's got a direct connection to the wider issue with Africa as well. I think probably what I would start with by saying is that, look, you're right. This is a British institution, a charitable institution, which has done an awful lot of good for an awfully long time. And the thing that really strikes me is I was actually there in 2014 when Ed Sheeran recorded a new version of it, along with, as it was at the time, the biggest artists of their moment. One Direction were there, Harry Styles and co, Chris Martin, of course, from Coldplay, U2, you know, you name it, they were there. And I joined them at the studio in Notting Hill, and I watched these people arrive. We all had to get there, I remember, very, very early, 4 or 5 in the morning. It was a very long day. Bob Geldof, of course, as ever, orchestrating it all. And what struck me was that everybody really meant well. You know, these are people who were giving up their time for nothing. Some of them flew in from other parts of the world to be involved, and were very happy to give up their time, their money, the cost to them to do it. And Bob Geldof really did and does and continues to believe in this cause. And I just have a slight discomfort with the idea that there are any number of star names around the world who do absolutely nothing for anybody and couldn't give a monkeys about people's plight 2 streets away, let alone in another continent. And if we get to a stage where we really start hammering people for, well-meaning altruism, where does it leave us? I think you can really see that Geldof and his, compatriots have given a huge sum of money to Africa to meaningful causes over a long period of time. If we start telling people, oh, you might be in trouble if you get involved with that, good Lord.
Right.
It feels
Simon, I think
known to me.
You make that point incredibly powerfully. And yes, there are always famines, disasters. I think what Fuse really was saying was if you keep giving money to the same people each year, it may not help. Thank you for coming on and for your testimony of what happened in 2014. And this is the point, really, isn't it, Kwasi, that basically if you keep giving aid to the same thing year after year, then the person receiving it becomes a victim, is less incentivised to find their way out of it. Right. The credit rating of the country stays very poor. It does need some thought, doesn't it?
So I'm not a rapper, but I am Ghanaian British. I didn't know who this other chap was. But we've got similar heritage. I get the argument. Yeah. They're saying... He's basically saying, if you infantilise and pretend that these people can't help themselves, they're never going to improve their lives. And what he's saying is that if you keep doing this, you're just going to perpetuate the stereotype that they're incapable and powerless, and they're going to be more dependent on the West. But it's a kind of political argument.
Yeah.
I think just accepting people's charity and altruism, we should just accept that at face value. As Simon said, there are a lot of pop stars or whatnot who do nothing.
Oh, he made that point. He made that point. I thought Lloyd very powerfully.
Very well. So I think you've got to tap in to goodwill and the benevolence, if you like, of the pop stars.
The problem with this is that we're all supposed to be for charity. You know, if we're for charity, we're great human beings and we're great virtue signalers and you know. By the way, I'm not knocking people genuinely giving to charity, but I do sometimes wonder that charities in the end, Lloyd, don't help the end recipient.
This is totally true. I mean, look, I give to charity sometimes when it moves me for causes that I care about. But in the end, charity is always a sticking plaster. It is not a solution. It doesn't empower people in the long term. It can help people get back on their feet when they've fallen down. But the problem also with charity is it comes with the norms and the morals attached by the giver, imposing it on. I mean, we've all watched Inspector Calls, haven't we? You know, kind of the great JB Priestley play where the woman says, well, the pregnant woman, she was immoral. She got pregnant. It was the son that made her pregnant, and it was the father that sacked her. In fact, actually, what you needed is systematic change to ensure that they can trade their way out of trouble.
So basically, you're saying that half a loaf is the same as no bread. No one's saying charity is perfect. No one is saying that it doesn't have...
question it. That's what I mean.
But if someone, people are starving and poor, and someone out of good, we used to call it Christian charity or whatever motives, wants to give people money, that should be a celebrated
But
thing.
it's the same as the homeless.
Surely.
No. It's the same. It should be celebrated in the individual instance. But when you step back and repeatedly do that form of charity, then it is important. We have homeless people on the street here. Yeah. If every time you walk past them and give them a loaf of bread, but actually don't deal with the issues
You've got to do both. You're not really helping them. You've got to do both.
In fact, you're not helping them. Yes, you need to stop them starving today, but you need to, from an institutional point of view,
well, so if someone wants to give 100 quid, which is a lot of money, to people in Africa, you're going to say, you can't do that because we've got to change the system and we've got to...
I don't think anyone's saying that. But what I think it is saying is, can we look at how, if that money is coming long-term, how you refocus it so it can start... It's the old give a person a fishing rod versus giving a person a fish.
I get that.
Do you know what, guys? For our viewers, there's no point going down the pub for an early evening debate because you sit here with Kwasi and Lloyd and they could argue about absolutely anything and they will always disagree as a matter of principle.
I think we agreed last week for about 2 minutes.
I was worried about that. But we do at least give you at home the arguments that you can play with in your own minds and come to your own conclusions. Now, whether Jacob is an expert on Fuse ODG, I'm not sure. We weren't. Even the music journalists had never heard of him, but interesting points. Jacob, what are you doing this evening?
What are we going to be talking about? We're going to be talking about Labour's dislike of business, and the Shadow Business Secretary is coming on, Andrew Griffith, to talk to me about it and to try and understand why they have decided to hit farmers, they've decided to hit big business, shop owners are saying they're going to have to put up prices and sack people. Even the Bank of England said that prices will go up and employment will go down.
I do hope you'll ask him why his government put up corporation tax 30%. That'd be very useful too. That'd be very, very useful too. Well, we're done. It's over and out from me until 7 o'clock tomorrow evening. First, though, let's have a look at the all-important weather.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. There's snow in the forecast for parts of Scotland and also later on in parts of the southwest. But for many of us, it's going to be dry, plenty of sunshine, but it is going to be feeling cold. That's all thanks to this northerly flow that's stretching across the country, bringing us that risk of snow and the cold feel to the weather. So plenty of wintry showers moving in their way across northern parts of Scotland, these falling as sleet and snow, particularly across high ground where we're expecting some significant accumulation. For much of the country, there's lots of dry weather on offer this evening, plenty of clear skies, so a sharp frost and plenty of icy stretches by the time we reach the morning. And then some outbreaks of rain just clipping the parts of the southwest by the time we reach Thursday morning too. So plenty of wintry showers continuing across northern parts of Scotland, these feeding inland at times too, with some sleet and some snow. Some just feeding into northern parts of Northern Ireland, perhaps northern parts of Wales too. But for many across northern parts of England, elsewhere across England and Wales, plenty of clear skies to go around. So once again, a sharp frost and some icy stretches, so do take care for the Thursday morning commute. Across the southwest, though, a different story. We have outbreaks of rain just clipping Devon and Cornwall, later on into southern parts of England and Wales. This heavy at times and falling as sleet and snow over high ground, though it's not out of the question that some flurries could fall to lower levels too, which may cause some disruption. Wintry showers continuing across the north, but once again across Wales and the central slice of the UK, plenty of sunshine to go around, though it is going to continue to feel cold. As we head into Wednesday, there is still a risk of some snow showers, particularly around any exposed coast. But once again, there's still going to be plenty of sunshine on the cards. Still feeling particularly chilly, though, especially in any brisk winds that will catch across any exposed coasts. To finish off the week and into the weekend, we're expecting further unsettled weather with heavy rain and some strong winds. So do keep an eye on our forecasts.